Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Apply Now, your podcast focused on the creator economy and hiring tips. Today's guest is Brendan Gahan, the co founder and
Can.
CEO of Creator Authority. Did I get it wrong? Did I literally
Yeah.
just say it wrong? Amazing. You're right. I totally did. I totally second guessed it.
Dude, yeah, you did
Gan.
what I do. I psyched myself out.
I so much did in my head. Okay. We're just gonna take it from here, start from the top.
Honestly, we can keep that in. It's all this is good stuff. This is
This is the
gold.
content. This is what people
This
pay to see, man. Right here.
this
Now we'll take it.
or
We'll take it
just
one more from the top.
all right.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Apply Now, your podcast focused on the creator economy, career insights, and hiring advice. Today's guest is Brendan Gahan, the co
Can.
founder and CEO. Gan. Oh my gosh. Did I seriously? I did it again. Brendan Gahan. Brendan Gahan. Okay. Brendan Gahan.
Normally I'd let it roll, but you wanted to get it right. So
I do want to get it right. Brendan Gahan. We're third time's the charm. So, hey, everybody. Welcome back to Apply Now, your podcast focused on the creator economy, career insights, and hiring trends. Today's guest is Brendan Gann, the co founder and CEO of Creator Authority. Brendan, welcome to the show.
thanks for having me. And I think you should keep those earlier takes in for the record.
We could do some blooper outros for the fact that I'm mortally embarrassed that I've known Brendan for, I don't know, 10 years at least at this point. And we are partners. We work together very closely on the Creator Authority business. And for the life of me, if someone offered me $1 million to pronounce your last name correctly, I probably would get it wrong. So
And
thanks for keeping me
I'm
on.
I'm totally fine with it, seriously.
Nice. So, Brendan, excited to kind of dig into your background. And for those who are maybe new to you or new to the conversation, how did you get your start in the creator economy? What was like the early start of your career?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I feel bad if somebody has heard me on podcast interviews before because I brought this up, but if it's new, it's awesome. If it's not new, um, bear with me. But I was super fortunate. Got into advertising 2005. MySpace was the cool thing. I was on, we were all on the Facebook.com. You had to have your college email address. And I was graduating from college. I went to UC Santa Cruz and got offered an internship in San Francisco for this small ad agency. And Bay Area, startups, social media was the new thing. And in general, just being like a college kid, I was like broke and spending time on social. And then when YouTube came out, I was watching YouTube because it was like, people were ripping and posting full South Park episodes and stuff. And so I was sort of in this weird space where, I'd go in the office and I would be like, why are people spending, tens of thousands of dollars on billboards? It's like, in my head, I'm like, people must have some really sophisticated insights into like how billboards are actually wildly effective, but it never clicked for me. And so I don't know, like I just was really fortunate that that shop was small with like a lot of really great people, and they kind of would like let me just pitch ideas. And I was
Hmm.
you know, a junior account executive, and sometimes covering the front desk even. And but when I got hired, that's where I was spending half the time. But like I would constantly, any chance I got, I'd be like, you should pitch like this, a viral video, that, da 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 da. Like I remember we made a MySpace page for like the Monterey Bay Aquarium was a client, and they had baby otters, and so like I was like, let's make a MySpace page for the baby otters and stuff. Um,
Smart.
and then yeah, yeah. But my first real foray into the creator space was like the agency, like literally I heard the partners talking behind me how they were going to pass on this tiny brand. They didn't have a big budget, and I heard the number, and I like spun around. I was like, what if we pay these kids on YouTube to insert it into their video? It'll be like a piece of branded content.
Hmm.
And they were like, you can. pitch it to the client if you want. Go for it. Like, we're gonna pass on it otherwise. Maybe we can make a little money, and it's a win-win." And
Do you remember who the client
so
was?
yeah, it like literally doesn't exist anymore. So like,
Mm.
uh, this was like shortly after the iPad had come out, probably 2 years after the iPod came out, but there were still other portable MP3 player brands where, you had the external SD card, and it was this kind of mass produced um, MP3 player called ZView, and like you could get
Mm.
it in Walmart. It was like relatively inexpensive. Um, and yeah, so that was the brand. And so like, the partners at the agency were like, "Yeah, if you want to pitch it, go for it." So I went to Smosh's MySpace page and dug up Ian and Anthony's emailed them, and they emailed me back. And then I think we had a call that afternoon. They were just up in Sacramento, or just outside Sacramento, and we had a great chat. And then they're like, "Oh, we're going to YouTube's office next week. Maybe we can meet up." And so they came by the office. We chatted, and we talked a little bit about the idea. And they're like, "Yeah, let's do it." Talked some high level pricing, and then we took it to the client. Client said yes, and then after a lot of, it's like they say yes, and then there was a lot of back and forth and coaxing and
Of
stuff.
course, yeah.
Yeah.
But this
But
must have
then
been
when
one of the first brand deals that ever happened on YouTube. Had Smosh ever done anything like that before?
No, I have yet to hear of an earlier one, but I mean, I I would love to say, oh, it was the first one. I have doubts that that's the case, but it's the earliest one I've come across so far. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, and the video went live. They crashed the client's website, got millions of views, and I was like, this is awesome. And at the time, Mechanism was like just a few blocks down. And when I had originally been an intern, I was an intern for Jason Harris, who eventually, shortly after I got hired, left and became a partner there. And they were doing a
Mhm.
lot of cool viral video stuff. And so, like, every week or so, I would shoot him an email and be like, "Dude, you guys are doing such cool stuff. I think I could help out." And then when I got that sort of initial win with Smosh, I was like sending it to him, and like I just pitch him ideas all the time. Because they were, at the time, like nobody was really doing like a lot of branded, cool video stuff for brands
Uh-huh.
on YouTube. And they hired me, and then it was like mostly, the platforms didn't have paid media, or like on YouTube, the only thing you could buy was the front page. So we would make all this cool stuff, and then myself and the team grew over time, but it was myself and two other guys in the early days, and we would just constantly be like having to like rack our brains, like, how are we going to make this stuff get seen? And we did a ton of cool stuff, but influencers was continuously a big part of that. So yeah, we got to work with like a lot of early creators, some that are still big today. Some of them we cut their first checks, and that was where I kind of got the bug.
That's amazing. So there's a number of things that I hear from this story you shared that I want to call out. The first is, you were kind of intentional, it sounds like, about working in new media. You were attracted to YouTube and these emerging platforms as a chance to kind of disrupt traditional advertising and to experiment, right? Like opportunities for brands to find a voice or build an audience. The second thing was you went to a place where you could do this, right? So you kind of started, on the ground floor, but you were in a small environment where you had the freedom to express ideas or pitch things, or there's kind of creative freedom that even the partners or owners of this agency would listen to a junior account executive who had a cool idea about something that otherwise might not have been an opportunity, right? They were about to just pass on the client, and you turned that into a really successful test. And the last piece is kind of you being proactive, right? You like having these ideas, you suggesting them not only in your current company, but also kind of tracking the progress, building relationships with other agency owners like Jason at Mechanism, and then using that to kind of build your personal brand, start to tell the story of how you could creatively influence content decisions in digital media.
Wow, when you put it that way, it sounds so much smarter than than when I was in it
Well, I'm
or
trying
the
to
way I
tease out the
said it.
lessons, right, for the listener. And I think for people early on in their career, there's a lot of amazing things within your story
Yeah.
that resonate, right? Like if I was 22, just graduated college, was thinking about like, how do I get started in my career? There's a lot of lessons just from that one story you shared.
Yeah, and I think one thing, if this is for people who are super junior, the other thing is like, while I would not say I was not great in my role. I definitely busted my ass to try and like be as good as I could be, and then I would get there early in the morning, stay late, and try and like work on all this other stuff so that I could like have some credibility and sort of like nudge the projects that I was really passionate about forward. And so I think the fact that I was I mean I would get in that office at 6 a.m. every day and like like try and like pitch stuff all the time, but at the same time get
Wow.
my own work done. Because I mean, I was super fortunate. They were so open minded. Um, and I love the whole ad agency environment.
Hmm. Nice. So you spend some time at that early agency, and then you wind up at Mechanism, right? So you make your way over to working with Jason Harris the first time, and then fast forward a little bit, you go to Fullscreen, right? Which is this early YouTube multi-channel network focused on helping creators build their careers and their platform. But you leave Fullscreen to kind of do your first entrepreneurial endeavor. So,
Hmm.
what gave you the startup bug, and what inspired you to launch your first agency, Epic Signal?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think at the time, there was the MCN boom, and so people were. It went from like really like 5 or 6 years of most people not understanding influencers. You're starting at square one. Um, I think all these things we take for granted to a certain extent today. I mean, today we've got a whole different set of issues, but it was really constantly sort of being like, "Am I?" you know are we stupid for like thinking there's a career here? It wasn't this established sort of practice or accepted even like aspect of the industry for a long time. And then like it was like YouTube launched their $100 million grant program, the Billboard campaign, MCNs blew up, and suddenly the industry turned its head towards influencers and YouTubers in particular in this big way. And going to full screen, they to George's credit, the founder, he really capitalized on it. But I think at full screen, I sort of felt like they were growing really quickly, and I was sort of in this environment that was really fast paced. A lot of people were very smart, but comparatively new to influencer marketing, and I was so used to doing really like, or be at least being able to pitch really like immersive influencer campaigns, and I sort of felt like uh, I wasn't able to sort of spread my wings and do the work that I really wanted to do and take it the you know do pitch the ideas I wanted to do with influencers and really kind of be more holistic about it versus like kind of like a bunch of one-off deals. And I'm not saying that's everything they did, but it was just like a different environment. And I felt like, hey, there's so much hype around this space. I'm realizing there's a lot of people coming into it, but they haven't been doing it as long as me. I think there's an opportunity for me to go and do more of the work that I really want to do. And so I struck out on my own. And, because for years I was sort of like doing it in a little bit of like where it was like the only one sort of, I was like this Pied Piper without an audience. And then suddenly like everybody was interested in the space. When I struck out on my own, all these people were like, who had worked with at different brands or agencies sort of came out of the woodwork and were like, dude,
Mm.
influencers is a hot thing. Can you help us out? And so it really ramped up pretty quickly in starting Epic Signal, which was I was really fortunate. It was very much right place, right time.
Yeah. So you run Epic Signal and then end up selling that to Mechanism, right? Mechanism acquires the business, and you go back in as kind of chief innovation officer. You're doing a lot of strategy work. You're pitching on clients, but helping drive their influencer practice, social digital practice. So as you move into this next chapter of your career, right, going into kind of the mid stage, what did you learn, or what are the things that might be relevant for people in that phase of their career?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I learned in transitioning from like being an entrepreneur to being back part of an organization was sort of what it's like finding what you're good at and what you want to do. And being an entrepreneur was really difficult. I struck out on my own. I was the founder, CEO. I owned the whole thing, and then I hired great people, but it was a small team, and I was the sort of like all the decisions came down to me. Like, and I got very burnt out. I'm already a bit of a workaholic, but in that situation, I was just like 24/7, and
Yeah.
I sort of realized like I would trade, you know, time and money. I would trade money for more time and support, and
Mhm.
so I started shopping it around because we also had great clients. Like we were working with like Bud Light, Corona, Mountain Dew, Pepsi, Toyota, and so I felt like I sort of had something. I was still tight with Jason, and we were getting offers and stuff, and I'd hit him up asking for advice, and then he was basically like, don't take that deal, come back. And so, it was like a trade off at that point. Do you go with what's the phrase? Like go with the
The
devil you
devil you
know
know versus
versus
the devil you don't. Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, you know, I've got good relationships with those guys. We're still friends, and wanted that support and infrastructure again. So yeah, I think that was really what I learned. It's sort of like, what do I want to do and focus on, and what am I willing to trade to get that?
Yeah, being more intentional and prioritizing. Right, I fell victim to the same thing in my 20s. Was this eager, proactive, wanting to get ahead, worked a ton, right? And then as an entrepreneur, started a business when I was 25. I worked nonstop, right? So it's like weekends, nights. It just was any time to try and move the ball forward. When you put all this pressure on yourself, it creates these difficult expectations. And so, yeah, once you get a little bit older and you learn some of this the hard way, you find out what's the right balance for me. When do I want to work? When do I want to have personal time, relationships, etc.? Because all of those other things are just as important.
100%. Yeah, yeah.
And how about now? So fast forward, right? The Mechanism business is acquired. You spend some time transition through that acquisition, and then have a chance to kind of pick your head up again and say, "What's next?" And you focus in on B2B influence marketing, specifically around LinkedIn creators. What was that journey like?
Yeah. Well, you're a big part of that, for sure. But well, I'll start with the personal. Like my LinkedIn story was like, so for years, I'd been behind the scenes, and I always was maybe a little bit envious of people who were good about getting their name out there and that kind of thing, and sharing their thoughts publicly. And
Hmm.
I always suffered from a bit of I don't know, analysis paralysis, and just like fear of like putting myself out there publicly.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I have a tendency to, kind of make weird goals for myself every, year or 6 months or a couple years. And I was like, "Oh, I need to get over this fear." And there's a quote actually that I remember. It was like something about like, I feel like it's a Tim Ferriss quote, but sort of like you want to inoculate yourself from that fear. And so I was like, okay, what's the easiest way to get over like this fear of like sharing ideas? Because like I would write blog posts, and I would just keep writing, keep writing, keep writing, and never post it. And so I
The
was like,
hardest
oh,
part
it's
is
like the
pressing publish. Yeah.
100%. And so I was like, I just need to get over that. And
Hmm.
so I made a goal of publishing at least once a day to LinkedIn all
Hmm.
year. And so January 1st, 2020, I started. And sometimes it would literally just be like me sharing a blog post and writing, this is cool, just to kind of get over it. But I really enjoyed the LinkedIn sort of environment. It felt a
Hmm.
little bit safer in a lot of ways than other ecosystems, because I was also talking about industry stuff. So yeah, just started publishing every day for a year, and then eventually I sort of like uh, got over a little bit of that fear, and I did TikTok and stuff like that, and then yeah, as the ecosystem grew, in 2021, there was like all these creator initiatives, creator mode, creator grant program. They hired partner managers. The community grew, and you and myself and Avi and Phil and a bunch of other guys would sort of like trade, you know, ideas and messages back and forth, and there was sort of like this little community going. And it felt like like LinkedIn had sort of like reached this inflection point
Hmm.
where there was this massive community, but not a ton of brands. And I think you may have been the one that told me like about this idea of I think, and I might have the details kind of wrong, but I think it was like you, Phil, and Avi were sort of toying, like putting together a media kit to pitch to brands.
Sure. Yep.
And I found that really enticing. And then, I think we worked on a media kit together. And then as I was sort of like maybe getting a little restless, I was like, I think that could be a real business. And yeah.
Hmm.
And then we had some conversations about me going and turning it into a full-time thing and expanding beyond us and making it
And
an
we're so glad
agency.
you did. Yeah. So I will add a little bit of color because I think that's a good summary. But I will also say that you're being very modest, right? You've been recognized as a top voice on LinkedIn. You built over 100,000 followers on TikTok, and I think for me, as someone who's followed your career before getting to work more closely with you in the last year or so, you have aspired to walk the walk, right? As someone who's in the business, you wanted to educate yourself about the platforms and the tactics and the strategies that would work for your clients. And the best way to do that is through trial and error, right? Experimentation. I had a similar journey on LinkedIn shortly after you. I think maybe the COVID stuff going on, like 2021, I set a goal to publish every weekday on LinkedIn. And it was transformational. Like I learned so much from it. I've made amazing connections. I know your story has a lot of parallels. Just by forcing yourself to overcome that fear, right? Of whether it's writing or another year for me, it was running, right? I always said like, oh, I hate running, but I need to do cardio because it's good for me as I get older and everything else. And I just set a goal for myself, like I'm going to get out and run 3 times a week. And then it was 4 times a week. And it's, 10 minutes, then it's 15 minutes. And you just kind of build up. But the best part about it is conquering that fear, right? So even though those were the mental obstacles for me, the success was kind of a personal success of, well, I'm going to learn, what's effective on this platform, or I'm going to, start to become a runner, even though historically I would not have identified that way, or it would have scared me, or I would have like said, no, this is not who I am. But the fact that you can kind of start small and then create a big change is really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also, I feel like you're being modest. I remember like us bumping into each other at one of the vid cons, and you're like, "Oh, I can't remember what it was, but we were talking about LinkedIn, and then like you had mentioned when you started like doing the once a day thing, and you blew right past me. I'm like, damn it! I mean, like I was happy for you, but I was more, I like I genuinely was, but I was more like, what am I doing wrong? Not like not in an envious way.
Sure.
I genuinely like. I think it's
It is
it
natural
doesn't
for us to
take.
all get caught up in the followers and the engagement bait of it all. But yeah, it is funny. Like, you see, oh, what's working for somebody else, and you want to benchmark yourself against a peer set, and that's healthy. Like we share stuff all the time. Hey, the algorithm changed, or this posted really well for me. Or I noticed like you, me, and Phil Ranta would all write about the same thing. I'd be like, why is Phil's post killing it and mine was bad, right? And so, some of that is over analysis, but I think collectively we've learned so much from each other, and it is funny that you get caught up in the numbers, even though you try to be like, that's not really what it's about. And now for us trying to help brands succeed on the platform, it's a lot more about how do you tell your story. And yes, the reach and the engagement is all part of that. But at the end of the day, it's more about this is a really qualified audience, right? There's more signal than noise here than anybody else. The community is very positive, collaborative, right? Unlike other platforms where there can be toxicity or trolls or other activity on LinkedIn, people have to, they are their work selves. They have to kind of behave a little bit. And that lends to, some good interactions and actually positive ways to connect. And I've ended up doing work and finding real friendships with people that I've met through the platform. So
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a great ecosystem, I think.
yeah. So as you think about, let's focus on LinkedIn for a second. For people in their career at any stage, right? Whether you're just starting off, whether you're an experienced executive who's seeing everything going on in LinkedIn, what would you recommend? How should someone think about their personal brand, and why is LinkedIn important for them?
For sure. Well, why it's important, I think, is the if we're talking about the way LinkedIn works, it's unique at this moment in time in that in a lot of ways, I think you could argue it's the last like true social network. The other platforms have sort of become these open source, um, open source media channels. It's like
Hmm.
really more of an interest based graph versus a social graph. And so LinkedIn prioritizes sort of like who you've opted in to follow and then sort of who's in your extended community, and then filters that based off of, is the content informational and helpful? And so, as you're thinking about that through the lens of your career, it's like a great way to connect with your peers, meet new folks in your industry. And also, I think it almost acts as a little bit of sort of like this, like bat signal. I don't know if that's like the best analogy, but sort of like a way to share your thoughts and like wave your hand and say, like, hey, I'm over here. Like, who else thinks this way? And, and then you sort of like are able to meet your people and find individuals and other smart folks that think along sort of similar lines to you. And I think that aspect is the most rewarding, and certainly that can open doors from a career standpoint, monetization standpoint, et cetera. But more than anything, I always like, probably, I think similar to you, like I like sort of like meeting people who have interesting takes or have a different perspective, and you're sort of like, huh, I never thought of it that way. Um,
Hmm.
and so that's the aspect of it that I personally really enjoy.
For sure. I'll add to that to say that I think a lot of people start out saying, I'm going to share content on LinkedIn because I need to hit this artificial goal, right? I need to have a certain number of followers, or this needs to kind of like drive leads from a business. And those things can happen, but I think of them more as the side effects rather than like the
Hmm.
real ultimate outcome. For me, I started creating content that I legitimately was interested in, right? And I still try to stay fairly true to that mission of like, okay, what would I want to read, or what am I curious about? And I would end up kind of approaching our industry as an academic or someone who's curious and wanting to learn, and then sharing what I learned with other people because that was kind of the nature of what led to valuable content. And as a result of that, right, like not having an expectation, it comes back to you tenfold, right? And I same
Yeah.
kind of ethos in making introductions for people or trying to be helpful and additive to folks in our space because it is kind of open and collaborative. That's been one of the best things for me is like don't play the game by someone else's rules of like, oh, I need to get 10,000 followers or I need to get 1,000 impressions on this post. It's more about like, I'm doing this because it's going to make me a better writer. It's going to make me a better leader. I'm more informed about our space. Like I'm
Hmm.
going to get better about defending my opinion about something in public. And then as a result, just naturally, people are going to be interested and connect with you. I think what's changed is both of us were on LinkedIn very early on. I used to just cold connect with people. And legitimately, it was just like, hey, I like what you're doing. I'd love to learn more about it. Maybe we can help each other, or maybe I can learn from you. And I met so many people on LinkedIn that way 10 years ago. But you can't do that today,
Right.
right? It's very hard. But if you create content rather than it being that kind of um, pull mechanism of saying, or push mechanism of like outreach, trying to contact someone saying, hey, like this is me and I'd like to talk to you. Content is a magnet, it attracts people to you. And then they're more likely to engage. So if you're sharing really interesting insights into the creator economy and LinkedIn influencer marketing, all of a sudden it's like, oh, like I know who Brendan is. He's really smart. He's thoughtful. He shares this valuable content. I know he's a subject matter expert. So when I have that need, I'm going to think to work with him.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great way of thinking about it.
Nice. And as you think about building out a business in this space, talk to me about the opportunity. Why, how are brands navigating the challenge of figuring out a new platform, and what's different about LinkedIn than their traditional influencer marketing activities?
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's so many different ways to answer that, but I think in terms of like breaking it down, like why LinkedIn and why LinkedIn influencer marketing, as a byproduct of their investment in the community over the last few years, per my reference earlier about like, they did the creator mode, grant program, partner managers, all that stuff. Last year, they saw a 24% year over year increase in content shared on the platform. Now there's over 150,000 newsletters. It's this incredible audience. It's like highly qualified. They've got over 1 billion users worldwide. That's great. But the great thing is, these are people that are more affluent on average. 1.3x more affluent than the typical Facebook user. They're decision makers, and from a brand standpoint, if you're thinking about it, um, it's an incredibly trusted environment amongst users. eMarketer did a poll amongst social media users, and for 5 years in a row, LinkedIn was most trusted platform. But in addition to that, brands probably think of it as the most trusted platform. I mean, they haven't run into issues like really everywhere else. No Cambridge Analytica scandal. They don't have an
Hmm.
Elon Musk. They don't have extremist content on there. There's
Hmm.
no adpocalypse. So it's an incredibly brand safe environment. And then now I think, you're reaching this sort of like inflection point where so it's this brand safe environment. There's this engaged community. We talked a little bit about like how they're adjusting what you see in the feed and the way their algorithms work. So it's more kind of like it's depth over breadth, relevance over reach. And now there's this new sort of trend with the platform support to support an influencer ecosystem. So last year,
Hmm.
they launched a brand disclosure tool, and they launched the first version of the thought leader ads, which was a promoted post tool. Now, the first version, you could just amplify employee posts. 3-4 weeks ago, they made an announcement where now it's essentially a promoted post feature. So you can work with an influencer and run it as a promoted post via thought leader ads. So they're actively sort of like getting behind this community and ecosystem and beginning to connect brands and creators in a very intentional way. So um, I think all these elements and a number of others are coming together to create this like really incredible opportunity that sort of feels like, the early days of YouTube, Instagram, Vine, TikTok, where there's not a lot of
Hmm.
brands that have kind of caught up, but the creator ecosystem is there and it's very hungry and eager for this type of thing.
Yeah, phenomenal. Let's shift gears. We've just got a few minutes left, so I want to finish up with maybe some rapid fire questions. We'll start with a fun one. What's the craziest or weirdest job you've ever had?
Ooh, craziest. Well, I probably have two. One is I worked at the sweet factory in the mall, the candy store in high school.
Okay. That was
And
that.
then yeah, that was pretty funny. And then for several summers, I also worked for the Ventura County Flood Control Department.
Hmm.
And basically we were working on like kind of you it was brutal. It was just manual labor. You'd go out hot days every day, 5 days a week. I think I had to be at work at 6 a.m. and it was a lot of like digging up and cutting out invasive species, and then planting native plants. And we worked with like
Oh,
heavy
geez.
machinery and like fixing all the piping and stuff, because if there was like different projects going on, related to like dams or irrigation, etc., basically like the city would have to plant more native species, and you'd have to get rid of
Hmm.
non-invasive or invasive species. And so, yeah, I got to spend a lot of time with weed whackers in the heat.
And you
So,
figured out very quickly, like, this is not for me. The agency life sounds a bit more fun, huh?
oh my gosh, when I got into my first ad agency office, and I was like, "There's a beer fridge and like pool table." Like, I was like, I never thought an office could have something like that. I
Yeah,
was like, yeah, this is way better.
nice. How about for you when you're building a team, when you're hiring people, what are the top three qualities you look for in a candidate?
Oh, that's a great question. I like working with really nice people. That's a nebulous thing. Are they nice? Are they curious? And I would sort of put like curious and interested and passion sort of in the same sort of general
Hmm.
sphere, because it's like, oh, like, have they really thought about it? Or are they thinking about it from different angles? And then are they like, passionate and hardworking, kind of like one and the same? Like, are they going to like try and push through to get a project done versus just sort of like, oh, I'm fine, time's up. Like, it doesn't matter whether or not the task is complete. So, those are very broad.
I like that
They're
though.
not necessarily
Nice,
skills, but yeah,
right? Curious and passionate and hardworking. Yeah, those are,
yeah,
I mean, essential ingredients for success. So I like it.
yeah.
To close things out, what is some advice you would encourage people to do to keep up to date with new skills? If someone is in their career but wants to work towards a promotion, or is thinking about starting a company one day, or just wants to kind of level up their game, what resources, tools, activities would you suggest?
Well, first, I'll say from an activity standpoint, like, uh, be good at the job that you're hired for. Like,
Hmm.
be my
That's
my
number
advice on
one.
that front would be, but you got ambitions. Maybe you want to shift into a different role. So be A minus good in that role, and then
Hmm.
and do it and do everything asked of you, and do it even beyond what's asked, and then outside the sort of like deliberate asks of that role, be ambitious, and on your own time work on sort of the tasks you want to be doing next.
Hmm.
Because it doesn't matter if maybe you're like amazing at these other tasks, but you're not getting your day-to-day work done, then you are unreliable, and it almost doesn't matter. So be very good, but not too good, because then they don't want to like let you move into another space, and then do go above and beyond and be proactive. Um, so I would say that I do think being a practitioner helps a lot. Like, I've learned so much, from doing the TikTok stuff, doing LinkedIn, etc. Like, that stuff, it's so valuable, and there's so many people who sort of like look at these things and say, oh, it's really, you know outside looking in, these things can look very easy or obvious, but really most of the time what's going on is kind of what you're seeing is sort of the tip of the iceberg. Like, everything from the nuances of how a platform works to the connections being made. I love that phrase, it goes down in the DMs. And on social,
Hmm.
that's like really the way it works. It's like
Totally true.
the
Yep.
the outward facing stuff, yeah, that's nice, but you're not really going to be learning it. You're not going to be making those connections. So I think be a practitioner, and like, even if you're not successful in like the traditional sense, have a ton of followings, big following. It shows that you're ambitious and curious and active in learning.
Hmm.
If you're not getting the work experience you want, now obviously I'm sort of framing this through the lens of social a little bit. If you're not getting the work experience you want, at least it shows it. You have something to point to other than just like whatever you're thinking, because
Totally.
thinking something and doing something are totally different.
Yeah, love that. Brendan, this has been awesome. Great insights into your career, into the evolution of creator economy and influencer marketing, and what some exciting stuff going on around Creator Authority and the future of LinkedIn creator marketing. Where can people find out more about you and more about Creator Authority?
Yeah, hit us up, creatorauthority.co. That is creatorauthority.co. Yeah, and then if anybody wants to get a hold of me, I mean, I'm everywhere at Brendan Gahan, BrendanGahan. But LinkedIn is probably the one that LinkedIn is the one I'm most active on for
No
good reason.
surprise there, right?
Yeah. But
Awesome.
yeah,
Well,
Brendan Gahan, anywhere.
amazing. Thanks so much. It's awesome having you on the show,
Thank you,
and
man.
look forward to seeing more great things to come.
Also, I just want to shout you out because you said nice things about me, but I genuinely want to say nice things about you, James. You're an amazing partner, a smart guy for sure, and all that. But like, for as long as I've known you, you've always been very cool and intelligent, but like incredibly supportive. And so I just really thank you for all your help in this journey. Pumped to be doing this with you.
Likewise. Well, I'm humbled. That just made my day. Thanks, man. Appreciate it, and thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.